I'll beat myself now.
Okay. Hi. Pippi Longstocking, Book 2, Chapter 3. Pippi writes a letter and goes to school, but only a little bit. Today, said Tommy, Annika and I wrote a letter to our grandmother. Did you? Said Pippi, stirring something in a kettle with the handle of her umbrella. This is going to be a wonderful dinner, she continued, putting her nose down for a good smell. Boil 1 hour, stirring vigorously, and serve immediately without ginger. What was it you said that you wrote to your grandmother? Yes, answered Tommy, who was sitting dangling his legs on Pippi's woodbox, and pretty soon we'll be sure to have an answer from her. I never get any letters, complained Pippi. But you never write any either, said Annika. You can't expect to get any unless you write some yourself. And that's because you won't go to school, said Tommy. You can't ever learn to write if you don't go to school. I can too write, said Pippi. I know a whole lot of letters. Friedolf, who was a sailor on my father's ship, taught me a great many letters. And if I run out of letters, I can always fall back on the numbers. Yes, sirree, I certainly can write, but I don't know what to write about. What do you usually say in letters? Oh, said Tommy, first I usually ask grandmother how she is, and then I tell her I'm feeling well, and then I usually talk a little about the weather and things like that. Today, I also told her, Today, I also told her that I had killed a big rat in our cellar. Pippi stirred and considered. It's a shame that I never get any letters. All the other children get them. This state of affairs can't go on. And since I haven't any grandmother to write to me, I can write to myself. I'll do it at once. She opened the oven door and looked in. There ought to be a pencil in here, if I remember correctly. There was a pencil. Pippi took it out, and then she tore into a big white paper bag and sat down by the kitchen table. She frowned deeply, chewing on the end of her pencil. Don't disturb me. I'm thinking, she said. Tommy and Annika decided to play with Mr. Nilsson while Pippi was writing. They took turns dressing and undressing him, and Annika also tried to put him in the little green doll's bed where he slept. She wanted to play doctor, and Mr. Nilsson was the sick child. But Mr. Nilsson did not want to lie still. He persisted in getting out of bed and hopping up and hanging by his tail from the overhead light. Pippi raised her eyes from her writing. Stupid Mr. Nilsson, she said. Sick children don't hang by the tail from the lights in the ceiling. At least not in this country. I've heard it said that they do in countries way down south. There, they hang a kid up on the overhead light as soon as he gets a little fever, and they let him hang there until he gets well again. But we aren't anywhere south now. You ought to realize that. At last, Tommy and Annika left Mr. Nilsson and went out to curry the horse. The horse was very happy when they came out onto the porch. He nosed around in their hands to see if they had brought him any sugar. They hadn't, but Annika ran right back into the house and got a couple of pieces. Pippi wrote and wrote. At last, the letter was ready. She didn't have any envelopes, but Tommy ran home for one for her. He gave her a stamp, too. Pippi printed her name carefully on the envelope. Miss Pippilotta Longstocking, Villa Villacuela. What does it say in the letter? Asked Annika. How do I know? Said Pippi. I haven't received it yet. Just then the mailman came by Villa Villacuela. Well, sometimes one does have good luck, explained Pippi, and meets a mailman just when one needs him. She ran out onto the street. Would you be so kind as to deliver this to Miss Pippi Longstocking at once? She said. It's urgent. The mailman looked first at the letter and then at Pippi. Aren't you Pippi Longstocking? He asked. Sure. Who did you think I was? The Empress of Abyssinia? But why don't you take the letter yourself? Why don't I take the letter myself? Said Pippi. Should I be delivering the letter myself? No, that's going too far. Do you mean to say that people have to deliver their letters themselves nowadays? What do we have mailmen for then? We might as well get rid of them. I've never in my life heard anything so foolish. No, my lad, if that's the way you want to do your work, they'll never make a postmaster out of you. You can be sure of that. Okay, well, the mailman decided it was just as well to do what she wished, so he dropped the letter in the mailbox at Villa Villacuela. It had scarcely landed before Pippi eagerly pulled it out again. "Oh, how curious I am," she said to Tommy and Annika. "This is the first letter I ever got in my life." All three children sat down on the porch steps, and Pippi slit open the envelope. Tommy and Annika looked over her shoulder and read. I'm going to show you the letter that Pippi wrote.
And then show it to me.
It's up here. It says, "Darling Pippi, I certainly hope you are not sick. It would be too bad for you to be sick. Myself, I am just fine. There is zero wrong with the weather either. Yesterday, Tommy killed one big rat. Yes, that is what he did. Best wishes from Pippi." "Oh," said Pippi, delighted. "It says exactly the same things in my letter as it does in the one you wrote to your grandmother, Tommy. So you can be sure it is a real letter. I'll keep it as long as I live." She put the letter in the envelope in one of the little drawers in the big chest in the parlor. Tommy and Annika thought it was almost more fun than anything. Sorry, story time really makes me sleepy. Thought it was more fun than anything to be allowed to look at all the treasures in Pippi's chest. Every now and then Pippi would give them a little present from the chest, and still the drawers were never empty. "Anyway," said Tommy when Pippi put away the letter, "there were an awful lot of words spelled wrong in it." "Yes, you really ought to go to school and learn to write better," said Annika. "Thank you," said Pippi. "I went once for a whole day, and I got so much learning that it's still plopping around in my head." "But we're going to have a picnic someday soon," said Annika, "the whole class." "Alas," said Pippi, biting one of her braids. "Alas, and of course I can't come because I don't go to school. Seems as if people think they can treat you just any way if you haven't been to school and learned plutification." "Multiplication," said Annika emphatically. "Yes, isn't that what I said? Plutification." "We're going to walk about 7 miles, way out into the woods, and then we're going to play there," said Tommy. "Alas," said Pippi once again. The next day was so warm and beautiful that all the school children in the little town found it very hard to sit still in their seats. The teacher opened all the windows and let the sun come streaming in. Just outside the school window stood a birch tree, and high up in it sat a little starling, singing so cheerily that the children just listened to him and didn't care at all that 9 times 9 equals 81. Suddenly, Tommy jumped up in amazement. "Look, teacher," he cried, pointing out the window. "There's Pippi." All the children turned to look, and sure enough, there sat Pippi on a branch of the birch tree. She was sitting very close to the window, for the branch reached almost down to the windowsill. "Hello, teacher," she cried. "Hi, kids." "Good morning, little Pippi," said the teacher. Once Pippi had come to school for a whole day, so the teacher knew her very well. Pippi and the teacher had agreed that Pippi might come back to school when she grew a little older and more sensible. "What do you want, little Pippi?" asked the teacher. "Oh, I was just going to ask you to throw a little plutification out of the window," said Pippi, "as much as would be necessary for me to be allowed to go on the picnic with you. And if you have discovered any new letters, you might throw them out at the same time." "Don't you want to come in for a little while?" asked the teacher. "I'd rather not," said Pippi honestly, leaning back comfortably on the branch. "I just get dizzy. The knowledge in there is so thick you can cut it with a knife. But don't you think, teacher," she continued hopefully, "that a little of that knowledge might fly out through the window and stick to me? Just enough that I could go with you on that picnic." I'll wait a second to show you this picture because something happens. "It might," said the teacher, and then went on with the arithmetic lesson. All the children thought it was very pleasant to have Pippi sitting in a tree outside. She had given them all candy and toys that day when she went shopping. Pippi had Mr. Nilsson with her, of course, and the children thought it was fun to see how he threw himself from one branch to another. Sometimes he even hopped down into the window, and once he took a long jump and landed right on Tommy's head and began to scratch his hair. There's Pippi listening happily at the window on the branch of a tree, and there's Mr. Nilsson on Tommy's head. It'd be kind of fun if somebody jumped in the window, or if a monkey jumped in the window at TDA, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
Since we have so many windows open now.
Yeah.
But after Mr. Nilsson jumped on Tommy's head, the teacher told Pippi she'd have to call on Mr. Nilsson because Tommy was just going to have to figure out how much 315 divided by 7 is, and you can't do that when you have a monkey in your hair. But anyway, lessons just wouldn't go right that morning. The spring sunshine, the starling, Pippi, Mr. Nilsson, this was all just too much for the children. I don't know what's got into you, children, said the teacher. You know what, teacher, said Pippi out in the tree. To tell the truth, I don't think this is the right kind of a day for plutification. We're doing division, said the teacher. On this kind of day, you shouldn't have any kind of shun, said Pippi, unless, of course, it's recreation. Teacher gave up. Maybe you can furnish some recreation, Pippi, she said. No, I'm not very good at recreation, said Pippi, suddenly hanging over the branch by her knee joints so that her red braids almost touched the ground. But I know a school where they don't have anything but recreation. All day recreation is what it says on the school program. Is that so, said the teacher. And where is that school? In Australia, said Pippi, in a little village in Australia, way down in the southern part. She sat up on the branch again and her eyes began to sparkle. What kind of recreation do they have? Asked the teacher. Oh, all kinds, said Pippi. Usually they begin by jumping out the window one after another. Then they give a terrific yell and rush into the schoolroom again and skip around on the seats as fast as ever they can. But what does their teacher say to them? Asked the teacher. Oh, the teacher skips too, faster than anyone else. Then the children usually fight for an hour or so, and the teacher stands near and cheers them on. When the weather is rainy, all the kids take off their clothes and rush out into the rain and dance and jump. The teacher plays a march on the organ for them so they can keep time. Some of them stand under the rain spout so that they can have a shower. Do they indeed, said the teacher. They certainly do, said Pippi. And it's an awfully good school, one of the better ones in Australia, but it is very far down in the south. Yes, I can imagine so, said the teacher. But I don't think we'll ever have as much fun as all that in this school. Too bad, said Pippi. If it was only a matter of skipping around on the seats, I'd dare to come in for a while. You'll have to wait to skip until we have the picnic, said the teacher. Oh, may I really go on the picnic? Cried Pippi, and was so happy that she turned a somersault backward right out of the tree. I'll certainly write and tell them about that in Australia. Then they can keep on with their recreation as much as they want to, because a picnic is certainly more fun. And that is the end of chapter 3.